Greetings, fellow programmers. This is Pavel with a C++ exercise from Chapter 7, Exercise 9, Driver's License Exam, from the book Starting Out with C++, from Control Structures Through Objects by Tony Gaddis. Anyway, the exercise states that a driver's license office asks you to write a program that grades the written portion of the license exam. The exam has 20 multi-choice questions, and your app should store the correct answers in an array. The correct answers are given to us. That's the correct answers for the test, so they are basically a constant. It should ask the user to enter the student's answers for each of the 20 questions, and the answers should be stored in another array. In other words, user enters 20 answers, and we will store them in an array. And after the answers have been entered, the program should display a message indicating whether the student passed or failed the exam. If there are 15 correct answers out of 20, then it's a pass. And at the end, it should also display the total number of correctly answered questions, the total number of incorrectly answered questions, and a list showing the question numbers of the incorrectly answered questions. So we will have to kind of keep track of all that information. And we will validate the input that only A, B, C, or D is acceptable as the answer by the user. These are the correct answers. It's just a simulation. Let's say the question number A, the correct answer is B. For question number 2, it's D. For question number 20, it's A. So this is just from the book. You can make up any 20 A, B, C, D as you wish. So let's get code. And first thing, I'm gonna include IO stream. We will be using cout and cin for the input. So we will also use namespace, and it's gonna be the standard. So now we need to keep the array of the correct answers. Also, since we have to at the end display what answers were incorrect, we will also have to keep an array of the incorrect answers, and we will need to keep the array of user answers. So let's do those globally right after using namespace. We can do constant integer number of questions equals 20. There are 20 questions. I'm doing it as a constant instead of just hard coding it there, simply because maybe later it may change to 25, and then we would have to go through all the loops and change the number. This way we will simply use the number of questions as the number of iteration that we need for each loop. I will also do constant integer passing score, and it's 15. Where there's 15 correct answers, then the test was passed. So we need the questions. So it's a character array. Correct answers, it's an array, and I will declare it from right here. I'll just copy paste it there. These are the correct answers for my array, and these are the answers that we will be comparing against the user answers. Okay, so we need to capture the question numbers for the incorrectly answered questions. In other words, if let's say the user answers question number 3 wrong, we have to capture the value 3, because that's the number That's the question number that was answered wrong. So it's gonna be an integer array, and I'll just call it incorrectly answered questions. Now it's a very long name, but I wanna be, I wanna make it as readable as possible. And the maximum number of incorrectly answered questions can be this number of questions. We can have every single one of them wrong, so that would be our maximum index, will be equal to the number of questions. And finally, we also need a character array of user answers, which will be the number of questions as a number of indexes, because user will be answering 20 questions, so there will be 20 answers that the user will provide. Okay, so that's enough for the global variables. Most of them are arrays. I'm declaring them here because otherwise you would have to be passing them into the functions and as arguments. It's just easier and more readable when it's this way, because they are passed by reference. In other words, if the values get changed somewhere along the way, no matter what function changes it, we will have access to the new and updated array directly from every point in our program. Alright, so let's go to our main, and we'll do the integer correct answers counter. This will this will count the number of correctly answered questions. Remember, at the end we have to output how many questions were answered correctly. Obviously, we don't need the incorrect counter, because it would be simply 20 minus whatever was correct, gives us the incorrect number of questions. Alright, so let's do the main loop. Well, we need to validate the input for A, B, C, and D only, and we need to ask the user to enter answers for each of the questions. So there will be, in our case, it will be 20 loops, but if we change it to something else, then not 20 loops, but 20 iterations of the loop, but we'll use the number of questions as a iterator. So we will do for integer I equals 0, I is less than the number of questions, I plus plus. And now we'll get the input and validate it. So we will do another loop within this. We will do loop. We will do cout. Please enter your answer for question, and we can add the question number to it, because the question number is basically the I, whatever the iteration we are on right now. So it's gonna be question number, and it's gonna be I, and I'll add one space after that, because we will be writing the answer right after that. So without a space it would be all crammed together. Now this is actually, since I started from 0, we don't want to answer question number 0, so we actually do I plus 1. Even though the index is 0, the question is 1, because that's how people count. Not we count like people, so the output has to be the display has to be for people, not for the computers. So that's why I plus 1 makes more sense. Please enter your answer for question number 1 rather than number 0. And oh, I forgot those. And now we can get the answer that the user inputs and store it in our array of an index of I, not I plus 1, because now we are storing it for the computer. So this is just I. Index number 0 will store the answer number 0. Index number 1 will store the answer number 1. This is again just for the display, for the user, not what is being stored in the computer. We store in I. And we'll do all these while we will validate it. So I will create a function, I'll just call it validate input, and this function will return true or false if the input is okay. So we can do while not validate input, and we will have to pass the user answers. The current user answer we will pass into it. So let me just create a prototype first. So prototype of the function will simply be the boolean, because it will return true or false, validate input, and it expects a character. So over here we calling the function will pass the character A, B, C, or D that the user entered. But if the user entered something else, like I don't know, Z for example, we will validate it as incorrect. We will return false. So this will repeat itself until this is correct, until all of them the user enters A, B, C, or D. So the validate function, to validate input, let's do that one. Right here we can do boolean validate input. It expects a character, I'll just call it answer, and basically only A, B, C, D is valid input. So we will simply do if. Now our answers are stored in uppercase, so but we could allow user to enter lowercase, and rather than checking for lowercase a and lowercase b, we can just check it against the two upper functions. So two upper, if our answer that the user supplies converted to upper is not equal to A, and I'll just copy paste it, it's not equal to B, and it's not equal to C, and it's not equal to D. So if it's not capital A, B, C, or D, then we have a problem. So we have an invalid input. Except it's not equal to, I forgot the equal. So if it's not equal to A, B, C, or D, what do we do? Well, we can output a cout on a new line. Let's start it with a new line. We'll output invalid input and a space, and we will return false. However, if the user entered A, B, C, or D, then we will return true. Everything is correct. So it will come over here and it will check whether it was over here. The function we're asking, is this function returning true or false? Is it returning true? Then you're done. You don't have to repeat this anymore. However, if it's returning false, then we'll be repeating this. We will ask again, please enter the answer for the question number, whatever the number is, and store the answer. And then we will go over here again and check that answer. And it will be looping until the answer is A, B, C, or D. So that's our quick validation. Fairly simple. So after the input is validated, and we have all the answers to the questions stored in our array user answers, then we can check the answers. What I mean by that, we will check which ones were correct and which ones were wrong, because we have to know that for our final output. So we will do our over here we have the correct answer counter. So our correct answer counter will equal, and we will call a function called check answers. So let me create the prototype again for that, and it's going to be it's gonna return an integer. Check answers. It will give us how many questions were correct. It will return the number of correct questions. So that's the prototype. So let's do the actual function. So it's gonna be an integer returned. Check answers. And how do we check it? Well, we'll compare the user answers with the correct answers, those two arrays. Remember, they both will have 20 elements, so we can compare one by one what the user entered. Is the first index of the user's answers B? If it is, then it's correct, because it matches the correct answers. If is the second one D? If it is, then it's correct. If not, then it's incorrect. So we will keep a counter and return the value of correct answers. So our check answers, I will create a counter, just a local counter for this function. And in our loop, for integer I equals 0, I is less than number of questions, I plus plus. And as you can see, we're using this number of questions all over again, and we will be using them even more. So that's why I like to create it as a constant, because I can change the value here and everything else will stay the same. I won't have to go around and start looking for the number 20 if I hard-coded it right here. So we will do the if, and again we have to make sure that we're comparing the uppercase, so we will temporarily convert it to uppercase. So if the to upper, the user answer of the index I matches the correct answers, if those indexes hold the same values, then we have a correct answer, and we can do counter plus plus. We can increase our counter. If it is incorrect, well, we don't really care. We don't need to. This will evaluate as false, so counter is not increased. So and this way we will collect only the correct answers, and the number of correct answers will be in the counter. So we will simply return the counter. So the value of counter here will be passed to our correct answers counter, a variable right here in the main method. So now after that, what else do we need? Well, we'll need to know the incorrect answers. What we have to do, basically get the number of questions, not the total number of questions, each question number. Like this is question number 1, this is question number 2. We have to get all of those that are wrong. So after that, after we have our correct answers counter, after we know how many answers are correct, we can create another function called, I'll call it get incorrectly answered questions, and that will basically give us the question numbers of all questions that were answered incorrectly. But I'm not even gonna call that method unless there actually are any incorrect answers. So I will simply do if our correct answer counter is less than the number of questions, because if it's equal to, then every question was answered correctly. So only if it's less, if there are less correct answers than there are number of questions, then I will call the function, and I'll just call it get incorrectly answered questions. So let me get the prototype for that, and I'll just paste it right here. It's gonna be a void, and nothing's gonna be passed into it. So over here I will do the void So now we are calling the function, and the incorrectly answered questions. Well, we need, like I said, we need to get the number of questions and store them in the array. So again, I will create a counter, which now this is the index of the incorrectly answered questions array. That's the array we declared at the beginning over here, that will have the question numbers that were answered wrong. So that's our index, because we may not have, obviously most likely we will not have 20 wrong questions, so the indexes will not match. We have to keep track of it separately. And again, just a simple loop for integer I equals 0, I is less than the number of questions, I plus plus. And over here we'll do if our correct answers of the index of I is not the same as to upper of the user answers of index of I. Oh, I got the bracket wrong here. Sorry about that. There you go. So if these two answers don't match, then we have a wrong answer. The user answered it wrong, so we can add that number, incorrectly answered questions, to the index of counter, will now equal I, because I now represents the question number that was answered wrong. Alright, again, like if I have this is question number 1, so that if question number 1 was answered wrong, I'm gonna store number 1 in our incorrectly answered questions. If question number 4 was answered wrong, I'll store number 4 there. So after that, I of course have to increase the counter for the next iteration. So this now, after this, after we run this function, our incorrectly answered questions array will hold the number of questions that were answered, the question numbers that were answered wrong. And that's really all we need to do the output. So at the end, I will simply do another function called getOutput, and I will pass the correct answers counter to it, so I can display how many answers were actually displayed correctly. So again, I'll go up here, I'll do void getOutput, and we are passing an integer to it, which is the correctly answered questions. So over here we'll do void getOutput, and I'll just call it counter. We will pass the correct answer counter to it. So now we can output the results. So the first thing we can do is something like cout, and I'll start on a new line, and we can first we need to find out if we actually passed. So the first thing we can say is you have passed or you have failed. So we can do you have, and now we will decide whether we passed or fail. And rather than creating another function checking, if the number of correct answers was 15 or more, that's which it would be the passing score, we can do it in so-called ternary conditional operator. Basically, we will do something like is counter, that's the counter that's being passed here, alright, which is equal to correct answers counter. So it's basically correct answers counter greater or equal to the passing score. Remember, we declared passing score as a constant, which is 15. So is it? Well, if it is, we can display you have passed. Otherwise, we will display failed. So this will actually check the condition, and based on the score, whether we are passing score or not, it will display passed or failed. So it will you have passed or you have failed, and then we can do the test. So rather than creating another if statement, this ternary operator does it all in one line. It's fairly simple. Basically, you are asking, is counter greater or equal to the passing score, and counter being the correct answers. If it is, output passed. If it's not, output failed. Alright, so that's our first statement. The next one for the output, we can do you have answered how many questions correctly. So how many questions correctly? Well, the counter holds the number of questions that were answered correctly. Again, this is the correct answers counter being passed to this function. So you have answered this many questions correctly. And we can also say how many were incorrectly. So you have answered this many questions correctly, and how many incorrectly? Well, it's basically the number of questions minus the counter. That gives us the number of questions that were answered incorrectly. Okay, so that's basically the main output. But if you remember, we also need to output the number of questions, or the question numbers that were answered incorrectly, like 1, 2, or question number 6, or so forth. So if some answers were wrong, output, and we can output a little more than just what they're asking. We can output what answer was wrong, what was the correct answer, and what was the user answer. And you'll see soon what I mean by that. Basically, we will output the following questions were answered wrong. Question number, let's say 1. Correct answer was what was the correct answer for question number 1? Correct answer was B. You answered, let's say, C. So and we are going to only do it if not all questions if there are actually any wrong questions. So if the number of correct answers is less than the number of questions, in other words, if there are some wrong answers, then we can see out the following questions were answered incorrectly, and we'll output it on new line, and not count but see out. Okay, so we'll do a basic loop. We will do for integer I equals 0, but this time we will not go all the way to the number of questions, because we're only interested in the number of wrong questions, which was basically the number of questions minus the counter. That's what gives us the number of incorrectly answered questions, I plus, and within the loop we will simply output something like cout question number, and what question was answered incorrectly. So again, the following questions were answered incorrectly. Question number, what was the first question that was answered incorrectly? Well, that's the incorrectly answered questions of index I. Plus 1, because again we start from 0, so we wanna, this is for the display, so with I plus 1 gives us, instead of 0 it starts from 1. So we will output this as the, let's say, question number 1 was answered incorrectly. Alright, period. And we can do something like, right on the same line, we can do correct where am I? Okay, so correct answer was, and the correct answer is stored in the correct answers. Now what is the index that we are looking for? We are not looking for I, because again we are only looping through the incorrect answers. This is the correct answers. Well, the index is this, incorrectly answered questions I. And let me just let me just copy that. That is the index that we are looking for in this for this correct answer. Again, we are looking for correct answer array with the index that corresponds with the first incorrectly answered questions. All right, so again we can do and then we can do, you have, that was the correct answer, but your answer was, and over here we can do the user answer. So user answer, and again the index was the same, they match with the user answers, and correct answers that are given to us, they correspond. There's 20 of them, so they each match, the indexes match, so that's why we have it the same index over here. And end of line. And that actually should be all. Now this is again a little confusing maybe, so you know what, let me just go over here and run it, maybe it will be more clear. Let me just change this to 5, let's say just only the first 5 questions will take, and you'll pass if you answered 3 correctly. So let's build this. Oh, we got an error here. It says the check answers identifier was not found. Correct answer counter. So let me just copy paste it. Oh, I didn't misspell it. I bet it's, yeah, I forgot S over here in the declarations. So all right, let's try it again. Slowly but surely building. All right, we got a success. So let's run it. So over here it's asking, please enter your answer for question number 1. So the correct answer is B, so I'm gonna say B, like have it correct. The question number 2 is D, let's say I answer A, which is incorrect. The third is A, I'll answer A, so that's correct. I'll answer the fourth one correct, and the last one incorrect, but actually, you know what, let me try the validation. I'll enter Z, and it says, oh, invalid input, please enter your answer for question number 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so let's say C, and I'll answer it incorrectly, I'll answer D. So I will have 2 questions wrong, 3 correct, which is still passing score. So it says you have passed the test, that's correct. You have answered 3 correctly and 2 incorrectly, which is correct. And the following questions were answered incorrectly. Question number 2, correct answer was D, which is here. Oops. You can see these here even though it says question number 2, obviously this is index number 1, but like I said, it's a question number 2. So question number 2 is D. I answered A, which I did. And then also in the last question, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the correct answer was C, which it was, and I answered D, which it was. First I entered Z just to check the validation, and then I entered D. That's what my final answer, and I passed the test because I had 3 correct. So that seems to be working. Yeah, I don't know. Let's test it with all of them then, one more time. The way they want us to do it, with 20 questions and 15 is the passing score. So let's try that. And so question number 1, I'll do B, D, A. Now I'll do wrong one. I'll do R. Oh, that's a bad one. So 1, 2, 3. I'll do B, D, A, and now I'll do C. That's a wrong. Correct. 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 Wrong. Correct. 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 And wrong. And I forgot where I was now. I'm not even sure if I have it right or wrong anymore. Question number 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's D. So I'll do it correct. A, D, C. I'll do wrong one again. B, D, A. I think I should pass, yes, with the... Okay, I did 16 correctly, 4 incorrectly. And these are the incorrect... you know, let me scroll this up a little so you can see it better. So these are the incorrect questions. Number 4, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4. The correct answer is A, which it is, and I answered C. If I scroll up here, question number 4 is C, so that is captured correctly. Then question number 8, which is the correct answer is A, but my question number answer was C, which is correct as well. And question number 12, which is correct answer is C, and I answered D, so you can see D and question number 12D here. And finally 17, which is C, correct answer, and I answered A. That is, so it seems to be working. So again, I think the only confusing part about this might be these indexes. Remember, the incorrectly answered questions hold an integer. All right, it holds the integer of the question number that was answered wrong. Let's say question number 18 was answered wrong, so it will hold 18. So this is basically that number, 18. So we will then go over here and go to correct answers with the index of 18, and we will also do the user answer of index of 18. All right, that's this is important to keep in mind. This is an integer. Incorrectly answered questions holds an integer of the number, the question number that was answered wrong, and then we will simply pass it to our correct answers array, which is given to us, and the user answers, which the user entered as an answer. All right, so I hope this was helpful, and yeah, if you liked it, please like the video, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and of course, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.